From Wall Street to Main Street, this is LALATE.
Breaking news this morning on early mornings, LALATE. The president releases a new video pushing for forced stimulus. Meantime, the White House has a strange exchange by the press secretary on Friday. No less than a half dozen reporters asked, where are the bipartisan negotiations? Are they really happening or are they fake? Who's attending and who are you speaking with? Have you spoken with Senator Manchin or have you not? In this video, I go over what's going on with the narrative for bipartisanship and why you want this bill to go by reconciliation. I go over the time frame of the 2-month reconciliation process and the big money for forced stimulus. And for the first time ever, forced stimulus is dominating broadcast news with the news and the same narrative of this channel. That first, that the stimulus needs to go by reconciliation. Second, that it will come from both House and Senate members that want to give you stimulus checks. And third, that the money for forced stimulus would not come from the president, but actually from those members. That would be the single biggest payout that viewers have ever seen since the start of this channel. Meantime, I'll go over the exciting big news coming up this following week as a series of major corporations report 2021 Q1 earnings. I'll have the predictions and why these blowout estimated earnings could ultimately determine how fast this economy is growing. And the growth and speed of that recovery impacts your stimulus checks. It's a big morning of early mornings. The toast is toasting. The butter is buttering. I'm here, you're here, and I'm really excited for you to join me as Early Mornings LA starts right now. Good morning, everybody. The toast is toasting, the butter is buttering, and the coffee is brewing. I can smell the coffee. Can you smell it? And away we go. It's Early Mornings LA. Hope you are having a beautiful Sunday morning. Thank you for joining me on a wonderful, relaxing, great Sunday across the country. I'm so excited for you. We have a full lineup of programming today. Mornings LA, noon, afternoon, evenings, and late night. Thank you for joining me. If you've not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Also like this video, and if you've not become a member, consider becoming a member. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, Casino VIP. In this video, I'll go over the forced stimulus check, the reoccurring stimulus checks, the Senate path, the House path, the timeline, which is now becoming a real big issue as we're approaching that 2.5-month deadline to start reconciliation. I go over the latest new videos from the White House, not less than 5 clips you'll see in this video, where the White House is addressing issues about bipartisanship. And I'll go over what's happening next week for purposes of corporate earnings and how that could impact your stimulus. Here's what you need to know. Finally, forced stimulus covered on this channel for weeks on end, hour after hour, is now front page news on major financial channels. They're talking about the Senate pass, the House path. They're talking about the reoccurring stimulus checks, the amount, who's supporting it, and all the details you see on this channel, which is incredible, great news because it's front page news. There's a push for it underway. Understand that reoccurring stimulus checks come from both House and Senate members, not from the president. The president doesn't write the forced stimulus package bill. He proposes what he wants in there, and that ultimately the writing of the bill comes from the House and the Senate members. They put them in there. But over the weekend, an incredible, great new report said that Nancy Pelosi quietly, over the last year, has become very close friends with who else? House member Omar. Yes. Now, Omar is one of the House members, one of the most vocal House members who wants to give you those monthly stimulus checks. So do you think Nancy Pelosi wants to give you monthly stimulus checks? Insiders think she might. The House members' proposal is to give you stimulus checks every month for the pandemic plus 1 year. So those stimulus checks would continue the entire length of this pandemic until it's over, and then 1 year thereafter. That could amount to 16, 18, 20-something checks of months of checks. Senators instead want to go stimulus checks to the end of December. who are the supporters of these stimulus checks, both House and Senate Democrats. But the House members are more junior members of Congress. The House Senate members are more senior members of Congress. And then the amounts of checks per month differ. The House members want to give you a smaller monthly check, but more months of it, starting with $2,000 the first month, $1,000 thereafter. Senators want to give you a lot more money, but over a shorter period of time and faster. Let's look at the big calculation right here. Word on the street says the senators want to give you $2,000 a month, which over 6 months is $12,000. Wow, look at that. Look at that huge money. Or $1,400 a month, which is $8,400 over 6 months. This is the single biggest payout you have ever seen on this channel. This is the amount for single individuals. Who would get this? You would get this if you made less than $75,000 individual, household of 4 or less, and if you're on SSI or SSDI, Social Security or railroad benefits. Wow. Now, here is what is a big issue brewing right now. The president has 2 paths to do it, but in reality, he has only really one. The president may think or may want to make it look like he can do both reconciliation and bipartisanship, but he really can't do bipartisanship. Why? Because on day one, when he introduced the proposal, it's not a bill, the proposal, which is actually not even in writing, the idea of the proposal, Republicans came back and said, we're never, ever doing it because it has climate in there. They made it very clear. There's going to be no counterproposal unless climate's removed. The president, in his press secretary's briefing on Friday, was asked, who have you started negotiations with the Republicans? They said, well, yes, we have, and we're waiting for a counterproposal. Not particularly accurate, because the Republicans on nearly 3 weeks ago said there will not be a counterproposal. They're not going to offer a penny for climate. The bill is dead upon arrival unless you yank climate out of it. The president says it's not like yanking climate out of it. It's staying in there. So it has to start by reconciliation. You know that. So what is the time frame for recon? Recon is a 2-month process. It takes 2 months. Well, when is the bill going to get voted on finally? Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer have been adamant, and said this countless times, that the bill will be voted upon by July. And they're now saying July 4th, by July 4th. Well, obviously it has to, because Congress goes on vacation from July to September. You can't let this bill slide just to September. It will never pass in September because the economy will be rebounded. So it takes 2 months to do a recon. July. Well, wait a second. That's just around the corner. That's May. Yes. So Purple Power, you need to do your thing. You need to push to get these stimulus checks out the door and get this bill to the Senate as soon as possible. Now, here's what you need to know when I'm talking about the calculations and this new data about Pelosi and Omar. There are 2 ways to look at these stimulus checks, and that ultimately there's 2 different ways to perceive the situation. Would you like more checks of bigger amounts of, would you like bigger checks over a quicker period of time or smaller checks over a longer period of time? Viewers of this channel say they'd rather get the quicker checks. The senators, if they were paid $2,000 a month over 6 months, that would give you about $12,000. But if the House members instead, like Omar and Pelosi, wanted to give you $1,000 a month, then that would amount to then, $18,000, but it would take 18 months to get it. The head of the Federal Reserve says people really only spend 30% of their stimulus check. They save the rest. And viewers of this channel have universally said they rather get the checks sooner rather than later. They rather get the checks sooner than later. Here's what you need to know. It doesn't matter whether the House members put those stimulus checks in there or not. The senators will put them in at the reconciliation process, at the vote-a-rama. But it does help to have the House members put it in there. So what is the press secretary saying about this bipartisan negotiations? Well, during a series of press briefings, which you're going to see in this recording over and over and over again on Friday, the press secretary is asked about bipartisanship when it comes to for stimulus, other legislation, and doing things. The first exchange says, why is the president always touting executive order? Why don't you get things done by congressional action? First, let's see this exchange.
To work on a more limited package around background checks. So why not pitch something a little bit more limited, try to get something across the finish line? Is the president willing to engage on a more targeted background check bill?
I would say that I would punt that question back to the Republicans, who are not supportive of universal background checks or an extension of that, which 80% of the public supports. So our question to them would be, why don't you support what the vast majority of your own constituents support? And this is
So on the issue of background checks, when asked why would the president not go middle of the road and meet with the Republicans, the pushback was blame it on the Republicans. Let's listen to the next
Just a few weeks ago, I asked the president if he was going to be making phone calls to Republicans in particular in the Senate to try to advance the background check legislation there. He said he would be willing to. I know the jobs bill has been the priority. Is there more you can say about the kind of outreach he's been doing on background checks specifically?
Well, I don't have any calls to read out specifically.
So here the reporter has asked the same question again as the other reporter, saying, where is the president really doing bipartisan reach outs? And the response from the press secretary is this.
But I can tell you that in his conversations, and he has been talking with Republicans about a range of issues, but there are a lot of topics that certainly come up. And, he believes that, you mentioned the third mass shooting. It's actually the third mass.
And again, when asked for details about who he's actually speaking with and what details, the press secretary has no particular response to the question. Then again, in the same press conference, she's asked about the same type of issue.
To all of us and to the president. Kristen, did you have another question before we go back? Oh, I'm sorry, and we didn't get to you, and I didn't mean to, but we can quickly go, and then we'll go to Aaliyah. Go ahead.
Just really quick, I know we've talked about perhaps the possibility of splitting up the infrastructure bill, but just yesterday, one of the president's allies on Capitol Hill, Senator Chris Coons, really floated the idea of splitting it between, just a traditional roads and bridges infrastructure package, and then another one with everything else in the American Jobs Plan. Is that something that the White House is seriously considering?
I would say that the president's going to have a bipartisan meeting next week and a number of meetings next week where the jobs plan is going to be central to that. There are a lot of proposals floating around there. One of them is from Senator Coons, who of course is a close ally of the president, but there are a lot of different proposals out there. So he is very open to hearing different ideas, hearing different ways to get these big ideas he's put forward, this historic investment to modernize our infrastructure, create millions of jobs forward. The mechanisms for that, the construction of it, the pieces that it could flow through, he's very open to what that looks like.
So the totality of the comments from the press secretary are incredibly inconsistent in a 24-hour period. She first says that she has no counterproposal from the Republicans. Then she says there's a lot of proposals floating around. First, there was no proposals. Then there are a lot of proposals. Then she says she hasn't heard from the Republicans. Then she says she has heard from the Republicans. Here's what's going on. In another exchange, one of the press corps members asked the press secretary, "Are these negotiations really just faux negotiations? Are they really just trying to make it look like it's bipartisanship because you really just want to go for reconciliation?" The press secretary really took homage with the question, saying, no, you wouldn't waste the president's time at all. He would never do something like that. Here's what you need to know, is that the Republicans have made very clear they're not doing the bill. The president has made very clear he's not doing the bill unless it has climate in there. And with that, the bill has to go by reconciliation. There is no bipartisan support. The reconciliation process starts 2 months ahead of time. And 2 months ahead of time is just a few weeks away from now in early May. Ultimately, at one point, the optics of the situation is going to be very obvious. The president's going to have to start the reconciliation process. That no matter how many times he wants to make it look like, whether it's true or not true, that he's having bipartisan negotiations, he's going to have to start reconciliation. Let me explain how reconciliation works and what are the items at issue and where would this go from here. First, step one would be for Nancy Pelosi and the speakership to introduce a bill to the House to do a reconciliation. Remember, Chuck Schumer got that major win just 2 weeks ago for reconciliation for exactly this purpose, for forced stimulus. Then it would be called to a vote on the House floor just to do a reconciliation. This is the tow truck. Then off to the Senate, it is approved, voted there, and approved there, and then off to the president's sign. At this point, the tow truck has passed over the finish line. Step two, go back to the House and now decide what goes on the tow hitch that goes behind the tow truck. This is where Speaker Pelosi will take the president's proposals, which we actually don't still have in writing, and put them on the tow hitch: infrastructure, climate, taxes. And if she so wants to, if Omar and Pelosi's alliance is so tight, then the monthly stimulus checks for purposes of the House will go on top of there. Call for a vote, done from the House over to the Senate. Now, this is what's important to really understand about how senators do this situation. When they do a vote-a-rama over 24 hours, they amend the bill. They add things in it or take things away. But generally, they add things on top of it. They're not going to remove anything the president wants. They're going to add stuff on top of it. What you need to know when they do a vote-a-rama is that these are plotted out weeks, if not months ahead of time. It's not like they just sort of randomly walking down the hall say, you have an idea, let's just add this in there. No. They know exactly what they want. They start by writing it up and preparing it to their colleagues, their fellow Democratic colleagues, over the weeks ahead of time, saying, what do you think about this? Oh, that's a really good idea. Will Chuck call for vote? I already spoke to Chuck. He wants it. Yes. Oh, so they know who's going to support it. Do they have enough votes? When Leader Schumer will call for approval. They don't tell Republicans. They don't tell any opponents. They get it lined up for passage as quickly as possible. So when we're talking about these monthly stimulus checks, this is something they're thinking out way in advance, how, when, and in what manner to add it on. It's important to understand that over the course of the recordings of the last 24 hours, you may have seen me talk about how the fourth stimulus package has nothing in writing yet from the president. It doesn't even have a deal memo. I had a deal memo for the third stimulus package in January. This one, I don't have that. In fact, there's been suggestions that the fourth stimulus package will have an increase of corporate taxes, inheritance taxes, capital gains taxes. We don't even have those details yet from the White House. Not much of a concern for you, because ultimately the concern for you is getting fourth stimulus out the door, fourth stimulus checks. Coming up after this commercial break, I'll go over a new video from the White House. Meantime, I'll go over the big financial news that's hitting this week and what it means in lieu of what happened with the financial data last week and its impact on your stimulus. Stay here. I'll be back in 60 seconds. If you want money right now, not 5 days from now, and not 5 weeks from now, then reach out to the community page. The volunteers can help you find that money for rent and utilities. That's at news.la.com/community. The community page features a series of volunteers who are viewers like you. They can help you find rent, utilities, SNAP, food benefits, mortgage assistance, and help you with eviction moratorium questions as well. They're Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram individuals. Reach out to them and indicate the city and state you're from, and they'll get back to you shortly. That's a community page. Volunteers working for you, viewers helping one another. Stay with LA for more. Join LALATE Daily for the excitement of the new LALATE live daily. The excitement starts on Mornings LALATE at 9 a.m. Home LALATE returns at 11 a.m. daily. And then afternoons LALATE at 1 p.m. Join us daily as the excitement continues live from Santa Monica on LALATE. And the excitement continues later this morning on Mornings LALATE. Here's this morning's programming schedule on this channel. Mornings LALATE kicks up at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. It's followed by Noontime LALATE at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then we go into Afternoons LALATE right after that. The schedule continues in the afternoons with shows every 2 hours. It's easy breezy and it's easy and simple to follow. A show every 2 hours. How are you? The toast is toast and the butter is buttering, and it's early mornings, LA. Thank you for joining me on a great Sunday morning. If you've not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Also like this video, and if you've not become a member, consider becoming a member. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, or Calcino VIP. Next week, we're going to see a series of corporate earnings report, and those corporate earnings will determine how quickly this economy is rebounding. This is what you need to know. Fourth stimulus is dependent upon a non-rebounding, non-recovered economy. Well, we are recovering. We're just not fully recovered yet. So when are we going to be fully recovered? Wall Street, Federal Reserve, Treasury Secretary, President, myself, everyone had originally said it was going to be next year. Oh no, that's no longer the case. It's later this year. The question is when. If we saw one thing consistent last week, it was that every analyst consistently got predictions about growth numbers wrong, and that the growth numbers came in stronger than what everyone expected. Let's see what's coming up this week, and will they be able to predict it based upon what's happening this week? On Monday, Coca-Cola, United Airlines, and IBM report Q1 2021 earnings. Jim Cramer says with Coca-Cola, he's expecting a great service story as food service reopenings continue. United Airlines, I think it's the right place to be, and it could continue to rally. IBM, he says a fast-growing business, but he's not quite sure if it's going to be reflective in the stock price. On Tuesday, he says that Netflix, Procter & Gamble, and Johnson & Johnson could be surprising. As a Johnson & Johnson, he says, I bet J&J has a fantastic quarter and reveals even better pipeline information. For Netflix, he says, even their conference call has good content. But then on Friday, oh boy, folks, Friday is the day in which you're going to see the big earnings for Q1 2021 that could determine how fast this economy is rebounding. Honeywell, he says, I think the numbers could go higher, but as to American Express, Jim Cramer says, credit, travel, and entertainment lines, we should be able to get a good read on the strength of the recovery going forward when we see American Express's earnings. Oh boy. Wow. This is just jaw-dropping. Last week, we saw economic data after economic data coming in higher than what Wall Street anticipated. Financial reports coming in higher than what Wall Street anticipated, showing this economy is rebounding faster than anyone involved thinks. Here's what you need to know. There's 1 million jobs being generated in this economy per month. There's 8 million missing. How quickly are going to restore those 8 million? No one knows. We have about 16 million jobs, long-term people unemployed from week to week, but we're decreasing that number so far 1 million a week. How fast will we restore those 16 millions? No one knows. And that's really why forced stimulus needs to get to the Congress as soon as possible. What did we see last week? The data across the board was just surprising. It started with just one economic data after another. Coinbase had a big IPO, one of the biggest IPOs of the year. And then we had Wells Fargo reports Q1 earnings. Folks, look at this number. Wall Street is projecting earnings to come in at 0.70. It came in nearly double that. But then Goldman Sachs, the investment banking firm, I mean, my goodness, this is just shocking. Wall Street estimated that it was going to come in at a blockbuster $10 a share earnings for the last quarter. Goldman Sachs blew it out of the water and came in nearly double that amount. It shows that no one knows what's going on. And then unemployment numbers. This was the big shock of the week. Wall Street, myself, everyone thought it was going to be somewhere in the 700,000 range. It came in at 576 new unemployment claims, the best number since March of 2020. These are blowout numbers. Then came the continuing unemployment claims, fell over 1 million in 1 week to 16 million. Goodness, California dropping in its unemployment claims per week, Virginia, Texas, Ohio. And if that wasn't enough, then we saw the retail sales numbers. Oh my goodness. Oh my Lord. February, we were down, and then they thought we were going to be up 6%. We came in 10%. We nearly doubled again what Wall Street is expecting. Whether it's the tech stocks, Microsoft, Facebook, or Amazon rallying, or Bitcoin just continuing to go up with Ethereum, or even other things across the board, there is a real push for forced stimulus, and the push is right now. It would restore 6.6 million people out of poverty. So it's important to understand what is going on. It's very simple, the message. The message is that you need this bill to get to the Congress as soon as possible because the economy is rebounding. That's not dispute. It's just no one knows how fast we're rebounding. And with just a few weeks away from when they have to vote on this bill, you want the bill there now when the economy is not fully rebounded. You don't want to risk it to be there when the economy is on the cusp of being fully rebounded. Meantime, yesterday, the president released another new video talking what looks like about fourth stimulus or third stimulus, but it's not particularly clear what the video's purpose serves. I asked viewers yesterday, what do you think this video's purpose is for? It's about hazard pay, and it's about paying essential workers for hazard pay, something the president has not done. He has not proposed legislation for it, and he's not followed with his campaign promises or his transition paper promises to provide hazard pay to essential workers. So what's the purpose of making this video? And what is this video really about? In this video, he talks with a caregiver, but why is he talking with a caregiver? Let's listen.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
How'd you first get involved in home care?
Caregiving for me is a calling. I started caring in nursing homes, then transitioned to in-home caregiving. I say to folks, I'm not giving up on you. I'm here for the long haul. I'll be here for you when you're sick. When the pandemic hit, my hours were cut, so was my pay. Caregivers do not have the luxury or privilege of working remotely. I feel people undervalue caregivers in our society. That's why I'm glad President Biden is talking about caregiving and talking about caregivers like me.
Well, you know, Susie, I kind of understand that. My mom got sick, got hospice and help. And what that made me realize was, how about those people who don't have family? What are the biggest problems you face?
Caregiving is a 24/7 job. You have to work holidays. You have to work weekends. You have to work Mother's Day, Father's Day. It takes a lot out of you. And I think so many folks work so many hours is because they're not getting the pay they deserve. We need to get people to want to do this kind of work. And by them not having any benefits, who wants to do a job like that? The pay, the medical, sick leave, we need to take care of ourselves, because as caregivers, we tend to neglect ourselves because we're doing so much care, because we're caring for others.
That's why we're going to make sure that in this caregiver legislation I have, you'll be in a position to get wages and benefits for the job you do. I appreciate what you've done. People like you should be rewarded adequately for what you do. You're an essential part of whether or not people can live full lives. So thank you so much. Stay healthy.
It's an honor, sir. It was an honor.
I wish I could see you in person, give you a hug, and tell your wife I said hello. I hope I'm not slowing up dinner.
It was an honor, sir.
And there you go. Not a particularly clear why this video was released. Yes, I asked viewers as well, what do you think the purpose of this video was? No one really understood. Here's what you need to know, is that in 2020, this channel started covering hazard pay. And to date, I think I've recorded close to 300 videos on hazard pay, 30-something weeks of hazard pay videos, always on Afternoons LALATE. And to this day, I still cover hazard pay. Republicans never, in any of their proposed legislation of 2020, ever introduced hazard pay one time. The Democrats introduced hazard pay in a really incredible proposal under the HEROES Act from Nancy Pelosi, $10,000 if you worked during the pandemic, $13 an hour, retroactively. And then it was dropped. By fall 2020, the Democrats completely dropped hazard pay in any subsequent legislation that they proposed, whether it was the problem creators, the problem solvers, or Nancy Pelosi's HEROES Act Light. It just came off of the map. It just disappeared. Now, Mitt Romney did have a standalone hazard pay bill he introduced to the Senate, which I detailed last year, that as a Republican he introduced, which was great, but he never supported it, and it fell by the wayside. But in 2020 fall, the president ran on a campaign to provide hazard pay for essential workers during the pandemic, and then during his transition papers, and also in his papers for the third stimulus package, he said he's going to provide hazard pay for essential workers during the pandemic. Hasn't done it yet. So why release that video? Not particularly clear. Drop in the comments what you think. Viewers love the video in general, as I do too, but we're not particularly clear why mention a video about a subject that you haven't paid on. And there have been other things the president hasn't paid on as well. One of the things missing, of course, is that student loan debt forgiveness, $50,000, which Miguel Cardona, his education secretary, had a deadline of last Friday to produce the memo that says whether the president can forgive it by executive order. It was not produced, and there's still no executive order. In fact, there's no update about the subject matter as well. If I was in the presidential press corps, I would be asking that question of the press secretary. What happened to Miguel Cardona and his memo? But we will stay on top of it all throughout the day. I'll have exciting new programming about exciting new other details happening for fourth stimulus, third stimulus, and also these standalone bills like executive orders for student loan debt forgiveness. It's a big morning, and I'm so excited you have joined me. If you did not watch the overnight LATE shows, catch them. They are still on this channel. With that, continue to stay informed and stay inspired. Have a laugh. Don't take life so seriously. Leave some extra coffee for the side. Don't drink too much coffee is what I would say. Don't have too much sodium in your diet as the salt caucus wants to overtake you next week. If you don't know who the Salt Caucus is, watch yesterday's videos. And with that, make sure you subscribe. Also, like this video. And if you've not become a member, consider becoming a member. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, or Calcino VIP. Stay informed, stay focused, and stay up LA.